My wife slept with her boss and demanded a share of my family's trust fund, but I made one move that left her with nothing but regret. I'm Matt, 32 years old, and my life has been, interesting, to say the least. I grew up with a pretty decent amount of privilege because my parents had this huge trust fund set up for me. I know that sounds like I had everything handed to me, but honestly, it wasn't really like that. My parents didn't just dump a pile of cash in my lap and say, "Go nuts." They made sure I understood the value of hard work. My dad built his company from the ground up, and he was always reminding me that money doesn't grow on trees. I work at the company now, trying to keep things running smoothly. Anyway, because of this trust fund, I had a bit of a reputation in my social circles growing up. People thought I was some kind of spoiled rich kid who was going to throw parties on yachts or something. I wasn't that guy. Sure, I wasn't hurting for money, but I wasn't out here throwing money around like confetti either. I kept my head down, worked hard, and tried to avoid anyone who only wanted to get close because of my family's money. But this story isn't about me being rich. It's about my ex-wife, Sarah. So let's backtrack to college. I wasn't really dating around back then. I wasn't interested in casual stuff, and if I'm being real, a lot of the girls I met just seemed more interested in my background than in me as a person. Then, out of nowhere, I met Sarah at a party. She didn't seem to know who I was, which was refreshing. We just hit it off, you know? It was easy, no pressure, no weird vibes. I took her to McDonald's for our first date. Yeah, I know, not exactly 5-star dining, but she didn't care. We were just having a good time. She was different from everyone else I'd met. No gold digger vibes, no trying to impress me with anything flashy. She was just herself. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Things moved pretty fast, but it all felt natural. I'm not one of those guys who dates for years and years before making a decision. If I like someone and we click, I'm in. After 1 year, I was head over heels for her. She was the first girl I ever brought home to my parents, which was a big deal for me. My folks absolutely loved her. I mean, what's not to love? She was smart, funny, and she always made it clear that she didn't need my money. She even refused any expensive gifts I offered, saying that kind of stuff could wait until we were married. Looking back, maybe that should have been a red flag, but I was so caught up in it, I didn't see it at the time to me. She was the perfect match. She had her own job at this advertising firm, making decent money on her own. She wasn't after mine, right? Or so I thought. Anyway, we got married 1 year later. My parents threw this massive party for us, and everything felt perfect. They even wanted to put Sarah on the trust fund as a beneficiary, which is a pretty big deal in my family. But Sarah didn't even seem fazed by it. That's another thing that really stuck out to me. She wasn't surprised at all by the money. She just nodded and thanked my parents like it was no big deal. Now that I think about it, she probably knew about the trust fund way before I even mentioned it. I guess she had her game plan all mapped out from day one. We were married for about 6 years, and during that time, she played the perfect wife. She got along great with my parents, showed up at every family event, and always made it seem like we were this happy, perfect couple. To anyone on the outside, we looked like we had it all. We had a nice house, good jobs, and from the outside, everything seemed fine. But about 1 year ago, things started to shift. It wasn't anything big at first, just small stuff, like Sarah started traveling a lot more for work. She had always traveled for her job, but now it felt like she was gone every other week. I figured she was just busy, and since I was always working too, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. The real turning point happened when my parents passed away, one after the other, within 6 months. Losing both of them like that wrecked me. I didn't know how to handle it, so I just buried myself in work. I was in charge of the company now, and I couldn't afford to let my emotions get in the way. I was working long hours, barely sleeping, just trying to keep everything running. Meanwhile, Sarah seemed distant. At the time, I chalked it up to her grieving in her own way. But she never once asked how I was doing. Not once. It's like she didn't even care that my world was falling apart. Still, I didn't want to be the guy who forces his feelings onto other people, so I let it go. I figured she'd come around when she was ready. 2 weeks after my mom's funeral, I decided to come home early from work and try to talk things out with her. I was thinking maybe we could take a trip somewhere, just to get away from all the stress for a while. I even stopped by a flower shop and grabbed a bunch of roses, trying to be the good husband, do something nice for her. When I got home, that's when things really took a turn. I walked in, and there was Nick, her boss, sitting in the living room with his bags packed. At first, I thought maybe they were there to talk to me about the trust fund or something. It wouldn't be the first time we'd had to meet up about that stuff. But then Sarah came out with 2 suitcases of her own. She looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "I was going to leave a note, but I guess this works. I'm leaving you, Matt. Nick and I are going to Italy and, well, I'll be filing for divorce. Don't worry, though. Your parents made sure I'll be well taken care of." And just like that, she was gone. That's how it all started. One minute, I'm coming home with roses, thinking I'm going to have a nice night with my wife, and the next thing I know, she's walking out with her affair partner, not even looking back. So there I was, standing in my own living room, watching my wife and her boss walk out the door with their suitcases. It felt like I'd just gotten sucker punched. For a solid minute, I couldn't even move. I just stood there holding those stupid roses, trying to wrap my head around what the hell just happened. And before I could even process it, they were gone. Like they didn't just leave the house, they left my entire life. That night, I didn't do anything. I didn't text or call anyone. I just existed. You ever have one of those moments where everything's so messed up you don't even know where to start fixing it? That was me. I must have just sat there on the couch for hours, staring at the spot where Nick had been sitting with his bags. I couldn't even cry. I was too numb. The next morning, I woke up on the couch, still holding the roses. They were all crushed and wilted, which felt like a metaphor for my life at that point. I tossed them in the trash and decided I had to do something, anything, to feel like I had some control. So, I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. Straight to voicemail, of course. I tried again. Same thing. She wasn't picking up, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. I texted her, "We need to talk, call me when you can," short to the point. I didn't even know what I was going to say if she called back. I just knew I needed answers. Why? Why him? Why now? How long had this been going on? But Sarah didn't call back that day or the next. The silence was killing me. It was like 1 minute. I had this life, this plan, and now it was just gone and nobody was talking to me. I wasn't going to tell my friends yet, not until I had all the pieces, but I felt like I was drowning in my own head. I went to work, I came home, rinse and repeat. Everything felt gray, you know? On day 3, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know more. I remembered Sarah had a close friend from work, Megan. I figured if anyone knew what was really going on, it would be her. Now, before you judge me, I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times, right? I scrolled through Sarah's texts while she was in the shower one day last week. I know, it's not cool to go through someone's phone, but something felt off for a while, and I was too stupid to confront her back then. Anyway, I found Megan's number. I called her. "Hey Megan, it's Matt, Sarah's husband." I tried to sound casual, but my voice cracked halfway through. There was a pause on her end, and I could tell she wasn't thrilled to hear from me. "Oh, hey Matt, is everything okay?" I could hear the tension in her voice, so, of course, I went in for it. "Listen, I don't know how much you know about what's going on, but Sarah left me with Nick. I need to know how long this has been happening." Another pause, longer this time. I could practically hear her weighing her options. Eventually, she sighed. "Matt, I'm really sorry. I didn't want to be involved in any of this. It's been going on for about 1 year. I told her it was wrong, but she didn't listen. 1 year. They'd been sneaking around behind my back for 1 year. I felt like my brain was going to explode. Megan, why didn't you tell me? I tried to keep my voice calm, but I was losing it. I thought you were her friend." She sighed again. "I am her friend, Matt, but it's complicated. Sarah and Nick, I don't know. She told me she wasn't happy anymore. She said you were always at work and that she needed something different." Different? What the hell did that even mean? We had a good life, a great one even. I was doing my best to make sure our future was secure, and apparently that wasn't enough for her. My mind was spinning, but I forced myself to stay on the phone. "And what about the trust fund?" I asked, my voice tightening. "Was that part of the plan too?" Megan hesitated. I don't know all the details, but yeah, she mentioned it once or twice. She thought she'd be set, even after the divorce. I hung up after that. I didn't need to hear anymore. 1 year, an entire year of my life wasted on someone who didn't even care enough to be honest with me. And now, she thought she was just going to walk away with a chunk of my parents' money. No way. The next few days I started making calls. First, to a lawyer. I needed to figure out what my options were. If she thought she was going to get anything from that trust fund, she was sorely mistaken. My parents didn't build that for her to go live out some fantasy with her boss. The next call I made was to my parents' financial advisor, Alan. I explained everything, and Alan, being the no-nonsense guy he is, reassured me that Sarah wasn't entitled to a damn thing. The trust was set up in a way that it couldn't be touched by anyone except me. Well, me, and whoever was managing it at the time. And guess what? I was still in control. That bit of news was like a light at the end of the tunnel. I wasn't totally screwed after all. Sarah and Nick could live it up in Italy all they wanted, but when they got back, they were in for a rude awakening. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I wasn't just going to sit around and let her walk all over me. I met with the lawyer, went through the paperwork, and got everything set in motion. If Sarah wanted to fight, I was ready to give her one. I was tired of playing the victim in my own life, but as I was putting all the pieces together, something weird happened. My doorbell rang again, not like before with the non-stop ringing, but this time it was just a single chime. I opened the door, expecting maybe a package or something, but it wasn't that. It was Nick's wife, Hannah. I didn't know what to say at first. I mean, what do you say to the woman whose husband is sleeping with your wife? But before I could say anything, she stepped inside, looking just as wrecked as I felt. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and steady. "I know what they've been doing, and I think we can help each other." All right. So picking up from where I left off, Hannah showed up at my place, looking just as wrecked as I felt. I didn't know what to say. What do you even say to the wife of the guy your own wife ran off with? Hey, sorry, my wife's a cheating liar too. But before I could open my mouth, she came in like she owned the place and just said, "We need to talk." We both stood there in awkward silence for a minute before she dropped onto my couch like she'd been here 1,000 times. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone, but I was curious to hear what she had to say. She looked pissed, but there was something about the way she sat there like she wasn't just mad, she was determined. So, she started, looking me dead in the eye. "I know what they've been doing, Sarah and Nick. I figured it out a few months ago. I didn't want to believe it, but now I have proof." She said it like it was just a fact, like it was no big deal that our lives were falling apart because of these two idiots. And I guess I just kind of nodded along, still trying to wrap my head around everything. I asked her how she found out, and she told me about how Nick had started coming home late, making excuses about work, the usual story. But then she saw some weird charges on their joint credit card, fancy hotels, dinners at restaurants they'd never been to together. When she confronted him, he brushed it off, said it was all business stuff. But Hannah wasn't stupid. She dug deeper, going through his phone, his emails, and that's when she found everything. Photos, texts, all the evidence she needed to know that Sarah and Nick had been sneaking around behind our backs for months. She showed me some of the messages on her phone. They were disgusting. Nick was going on and on about how passionate their relationship was and how Sarah understood him in a way no one else did. The guy was delusional. Meanwhile, Sarah was complaining about me working too much, saying she felt neglected. It was like reading the most cliché romance novel, except this one was ruining my life. I just sat there in shock. A part of me wanted to ask why Hannah hadn't told me sooner, but I knew the answer. Who wants to admit that their partner is cheating on them? And honestly, would I have been ready to hear it before all this went down? Probably not. After a few minutes of silence, Hannah looked at me and said, "We need to do something. They can't just get away with this." I could see the fire in her eyes, and for the first time in days, I felt a little spark of something too. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was relief that I wasn't going through this alone, but whatever it was, I was on board. We started talking about what we could do. She already had her lawyer involved, and I was in the process of getting mine. But it wasn't just about divorce. We both knew Sarah and Nick were expecting to come back from their little vacation and live the high life. They thought they could just ditch us and walk away with everything. But no, I wasn't going to let that happen. I told Hannah about the trust fund, how Sarah thought she'd still have access to it. She laughed, not in a funny way, more like an "are you kidding me" kind of way. That's when I realized Hannah wasn't just upset, she was ready for war. "I don't care what it takes," she said. "They're not getting away with this. We need to hit them where it hurts." She started talking about all the things we could do legally, and man, she was sharp, way sharper than I expected. She already had a plan forming in her head, and it was clear she wasn't just out for revenge, she wanted justice. We spent the rest of the afternoon going over everything, every detail, every document. She wanted to make sure that when Nick and Sarah came back, they'd have nothing waiting for them but consequences. She even talked about digging into Nick's business finances, seeing if there was anything shady going on there. I hadn't even thought about that. By the end of it, we had a solid plan. It wasn't just about getting divorced and moving on. No, this was about making sure they didn't get a single dime from us. They'd already taken enough. I wasn't going to let them take more. Before she left, Hannah turned to me and said something that stuck with me. "They think they're smarter than us. They think they can just waltz back into our lives and we'll roll over. But they're in for a surprise. We're not going to make this easy for them." And she was right. I was done being the nice guy. I was done sitting around waiting for things to happen. This was my life, my future, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. After Hannah left, I sat there for a while, just thinking about everything that had happened, thinking about the future. I wasn't sure where this was all going to lead, but for the first time since Sarah walked out, I felt like I had a little bit of control back. I wasn't just the guy who got left behind. I was going to take charge of this situation. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing. Sarah and Nick had messed with the wrong people. They thought they could pull one over on us, but they were about to find out just how wrong they were. So yeah, that's where things stood. I had a plan, I had some backup in the form of Hannah, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd come out of this mess in one piece. And honestly, that felt pretty damn good. So, after Hannah and I got everything in place, things started moving pretty quickly. I met with my lawyer the next day, and honestly, it felt good to just get all of this off my chest. Up until then, it felt like everything was just bottling up inside me, but now that we had a plan, it was like I could finally breathe again. Not saying I was totally fine, but at least I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself anymore. I had a direction. When I told my lawyer everything that happened, he didn't even flinch. He's been doing this for years, so I guess nothing really surprises him anymore, but he took it all seriously, which I appreciated. He asked me about the trust fund, Sarah's involvement, all the legal stuff we'd need to block her from getting anything. Turns out my parents had set it up pretty airtight, and as long as I made a few small changes, Sarah was as good as cut off. I felt a weird sense of relief hearing that. I guess a part of me had been worried that maybe she'd find some loophole, but the lawyer assured me that wouldn't happen. Still, knowing she wasn't getting a penny didn't make the situation any less messy. There was still the whole emotional wreckage to deal with. It's not like I could just flip a switch and stop caring. I mean, yeah, Sarah betrayed me, but she was still the person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. It's hard to just turn that off. But the anger? Oh, that was burning strong, and every time I thought about Nick, it just made me want to tear the whole thing down even more. But enough about that. After the meeting with my lawyer, I called Hannah. We agreed that we needed to stay in close contact so we could keep tabs on what Nick and Sarah were up to. I didn't want to become obsessed with it, but let's be real, if they were planning something shady, I wanted to know. So we started exchanging texts pretty regularly, just updating each other on any new developments. And then the waiting started. You ever have one of those moments where you know something big is coming, but you have no idea when it's going to hit? That was me for the next few days. I knew Sarah and Nick were still in Italy, living it up like nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, I was here, trying to piece my life back together. It pissed me off, but I tried not to dwell on it. I went to work, kept my head down, and just focused on getting through each day. But every time my phone buzzed, I'd get that little jolt of anxiety, thinking maybe it was Sarah finally reaching out. Spoiler, she didn't. But Nick did. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was sitting in my office trying to focus on some reports when my phone buzzed. I looked down and saw Nick's name pop up. At first, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. Why would this guy be calling me? Did he accidentally dial me or something? I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause on the other end, and then Nick's voice came through, all casual, like we were old buddies. Hey Matt, man, I just wanted to, clear the air between us. Clear the air? I almost laughed out loud. This guy stole my wife, wrecked my marriage, and now he wanted to clear the air? But I bit my tongue and let him talk. I know things have been kind of tense, but I just want you to know, Sarah and this wasn't personal. It just happened. His voice had that slimy tone to it, like he was trying to smooth things over with some half-assed apology. I couldn't help it, I snapped. Not personal? You're sleeping with my wife, Nick? How exactly is that not personal? There was another pause, and then he gave this awkward chuckle. I get it, man. You're upset, but let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Sarah and we're serious, and I think it'd be best if we all just moved on. I didn't know whether to punch something or laugh. The audacity of this guy. Oh, don't worry, Nick, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm moving on. In fact, I've already talked to my lawyer. Sarah's not getting a dime, and neither are you. That seemed to catch him off guard. He stammered for a second before he managed to say, Wait, what do you mean? Sarah said. I cut him off. Sarah was wrong. My parents didn't leave their money to support you two running off to Italy together. The trust fund is protected, and you can tell Sarah that she can kiss it goodbye. There was silence on the other end for a moment. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he tried to process what I just told him. And then, without another word, he hung up. I sat there for a second, staring at my phone, half expecting him to call back, but he didn't. I guess he finally realized that the gravy train was over. A part of me felt satisfied, but another part of me just felt exhausted. It wasn't like this solved everything. There was still so much to deal with, and honestly, I wasn't looking forward to the inevitable showdown when Sarah got back. But at least now I had some leverage. They couldn't just walk all over me and expect to come out of this unscathed. Later that night, I got a text from Hannah. She'd heard from her lawyer that Nick was starting to panic. Apparently, he'd been counting on that trust fund to cover some of their debts, and now that it was off the table, he didn't know what to do. I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction at that. Maybe it was petty, but after everything he'd put me through, it felt good knowing that his plans were falling apart. Still, there was this weird feeling gnawing at me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of all the drama, the lies, the backstabbing. I didn't want my whole life to be defined by this mess. I wanted to move on, for real this time, but I knew there was still more to come. Sarah wasn't back yet, and when she finally returned, I had no doubt she'd come looking for a fight, and I was ready for it. It didn't take long after Nick's phone call for the real storm to hit. Sarah was back. I got a text from her on a Monday morning. No, hey, or how are you? Just we need to talk. I knew it was coming. I had been preparing myself for this moment, but seeing those words on my phone still hit me hard. I didn't reply right away. I wanted to keep the upper hand, and honestly, I didn't feel like giving her the satisfaction of knowing how much this was bothering me. So I waited, went to work, tried to focus on my day like I wasn't gearing up for what was probably going to be the most awkward conversation of my life. She didn't wait long, though. When I got home that night, Sarah was there, sitting in her car outside the house, like she had every right to be there. I hadn't seen her in weeks, and for a second it felt surreal. Like maybe this was all just a bad dream, and she was going to get out of the car and tell me it was all some big mistake. But then, reality hit, and I remembered exactly what she had done. I parked the car, took a deep breath, and got out. She stepped out of her car as soon as she saw me. I could see that she was trying to look calm, but there was this panic in her eyes. She had always been good at hiding her emotions, but not today. Today, she looked rattled, and I knew exactly why. Matt, she started, walking toward me. We really need to talk. I didn't say anything right away. I just crossed my arms and leaned against my car, letting her make the first move. I could tell she didn't like that I wasn't rushing to engage. She was used to me always being the one to try and fix things, to smooth things over. But not this time. She hesitated, like she wasn't sure how to start, and then she blurted out, "I know you've been talking to a lawyer." I raised an eyebrow, and she took a step closer, her voice getting a little more desperate. "Matt, this doesn't have to go down like this. We can figure this out. There's no need to drag lawyers into this." I almost laughed. No need to drag lawyers into this. She left me for another guy and then thought she could just waltz back in and settle things with a chat? I wasn't falling for that. "I'm not the one who brought lawyers into this, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You left me. You made that decision. Now you're going to have to live with the consequences." She flinched at that, but she quickly regained her composure. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said, her voice softening. "I still care about you, Matt, but things just happened. I wasn't happy. You were always working. I felt alone. I felt my anger flare up, but I kept it in check, and instead of talking to me about it, you ran off with Nick." Her face flushed, and she looked down at the ground. "It wasn't like that. It wasn't planned. It just developed." I shook my head, not buying it for a second. "Developed? You expect me to believe that this just happened out of nowhere?" "You've been with him for 1 year, Sarah. 1 year. Don't stand there and pretend like this wasn't a choice." She didn't say anything for a moment. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what to say next. And then, of course, she went for the trust fund. "I know about the trust," she said, her voice getting a little firmer now. "We both know your parents set it up for us. I'm still entitled to my share. That's when I lost it." I didn't yell, but I couldn't hide the frustration anymore. "You're not getting a dime, Sarah. The trust was never for you. It was for me, and my lawyer has already made sure you won't see a cent." Her eyes went wide for a second. I think she was genuinely shocked. She had clearly banked on that money, probably thinking that no matter how bad things got between us, she'd still walk away with something. But not this time. "Matt," she said, and I could hear the panic in her voice now, "you can't do that. I gave you 6 years of my life. You can't just cut me out like this." I stood up straight and looked her dead in the eye. "You walked out. You gave up on us. And now you think you're entitled to the life my parents worked for? Number. You made your bed, Sarah. Now you can lie in it." She looked like she was about to argue again, but then she stopped. Her whole demeanor shifted and she started tearing up. "Please, Matt," she whispered. "I don't know what to do. Nick's job isn't stable. We've got debts. I need your help." There it was, the real reason she was here. Not because she wanted to fix anything between us. Not because she cared. She was here because she was desperate, because she needed me to bail her out. And that's when I knew, without a doubt, that I had made the right decision. "I'm sorry you're struggling, Sarah," I said, though my voice was cold. "But that's not my problem anymore." Her tears started falling, and for a brief moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Not because I thought I should help her, but because, part of me still remembered the woman I fell in love with, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. But that woman was long gone. I couldn't let my emotions drag me back into her mess. She didn't say anything after that. She just stared at me, tears running down her face. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car, her shoulders slumped into feet. I watched her get in and drive off, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like I could finally move on. It wasn't the victory I imagined it would be. There was no big moment of satisfaction, no feeling of triumph, just relief. Relief that it was over. Relief that I could finally close this chapter of my life and start thinking about what came next. And as I stood there, watching the taillights of Sarah's car disappear down the street, I realized that I didn't need anything from her anymore. Not her apology, not her explanation, nothing. I was done, finally.